John Merrill said it best last night. Quote, "We are tired of losing." I agree, but you know what? I feeling the optimism. I think we could go on a little MVP run with some Kirill. Let's see what we got.
I am digging your eternal optimism, Obi. You know, we were just talking about your eternal optimism, and by the way, love the tea, and I love your glass half full mentality, Obi. I always have. Like, you get it. You're just undaunted, unabashed by you're just refusing to like jump on the panic train, right?
All right, you're giving me too much credit. I think I'm still that Minnesota sports fan that I see somebody go up by a touchdown or by a goal or anything. I go, well, that's it. It's done. It's over. But part of me is going to try to stay optimistic. And how are you? Are you holding out the optimism right now?
Listen, I needed a flak vest. Because apparently we have a lot of people watching Hot Dish Sports, our Minnesota Wild editions. Last week, if you remember, I was pretty bubbly and saying not to panic. They went on a road trip. They got points. They're 500. This team never loses much more than 2 or 3 games. I'm sticking to it. But if you talk to me at Christmas and things are trending the way they have been in November, I may be a little bit more critical, which is what my Hockey Hot Stove League buddies want me to be. But I'm not there yet. I mean, I can carve. Hey, it's turkey time. I can carve a turkey, but I don't see a turkey yet at XL.
Yep. No, I agree. I appreciate the optimism for sure. That's what we got to do. You know, that's what people are here for. And a little bit of optimism for us is Kirill, in my mind. And I know we already mentioned him off the top, but you know, last year it took him 26 games to score 10 goals. He had 10 goals this year in the first 13 games, so it took him half as much time, but he currently has 19 points through 17 games, which has him projected for 92 total points on the season, which people are saying that Kirill's having a slow start, but that would still put him with the number 2 overall points in a single season for a Wild player, right behind himself from last year at the projection he's at right now in the pace. So, do you think he can do it again? Do you think he can outdo 108 points this season?
Well, I'm convinced that from a guy who literally wears Kirill on his shirt sleeves, that you're on to something there. And anyway, you know what? From what I see right now, Obi, I see Kirill probably pressing, probably gripping the stick a little too hard. I know that's a cliche, but the supporting cast around him right now is not clicking like it clicked last year. That's for sure. And you noted his a lot better start than last year, but you're also noting him maybe being on the ice for a few too many goals against. And I think him and Zuccarello might be in the doghouse a little bit. They were both -2 last night against the Pittsburgh Penguins in a loss, and in a game that they really kind of rallied and could have won. But Kirill Kaprizov is going to be Kirill Kaprizov. I mean, he's not in a petri dish anymore. He's a viable superstar in the National Hockey League. If he can get a guy like Zuccarello back on the same page, and if the Wild, remember we talked last episode about 5-6 players had banner seasons last year in goal production. The Goudreaus, the Eriksson X, the Folignos, so it goes. If you're not seeing that, then Kirill's outcome and his outsource, his goal scoring and his abilities kind of get muted a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And obviously it takes a whole team to win. You can't put everything on his back. But if you look at a lot of sports, including, basketball, football, do you think it extends to hockey where all the top teams that are making it into the finals or even the playoffs, they all have that MVP candidate? Do we need Kirill to go on that MVP type run in order to expect a run from the Wild as well?
Well, I mean, if we're just going to pick and choose from a menu, absolutely 100%. We saw a superstar, an MVP on the backside of his career pretty much dominate last night, and that was Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins. But if you also notice, they have a player named Jake Gensel, who's from the state of Minnesota and the state of hockey, who quietly had 3 points with a goal and 2 assists last night. So it's that supporting cast that Sidney Crosby enjoyed last night that I think Kirill needs to make him the MVP and worthy of this T-shirt that you're donning today on our podcast.
Right. Yep. Well, and one of those goals was an empty netter, right, too, that Gunsel had. Did he have 1 goal or did he have 2?
He had 1 goal and 2
He had one.
assists.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
he had 2 assists, and
but he's a
yeah, last
supporting
night was
cast. He's a supporting
right. I
cast.
see what you're
That's the
saying.
key to the point. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. And obviously, every year, supporting cast changes. It's a new year, new lines,
Yeah.
changes up. What are your thoughts on the Wild's lines this year? Obviously, last night, the third line, they put 2 goals in a single shift. So I
Yeah.
don't know. The other
Well,
lines seem to be struggling a bit too.
well, I've been thinking about this a lot, especially prepping for the show, and that is that Bill Guerin, the general manager of the Minnesota Wild, had his hands tied a lot. We're still paying for Suter. We're still paying for Parisi. We've got Kevin Fiala playing in Los Angeles, not tearing it up and not terrible right now. So he had a lack of goal output and a lack of offense coming into the season. What Bill Guerin, I think, was counting on and is counting on and will continue to count on is the balanced and supporting cast that we've talked about. I think that the Minnesota Wild, in order to have a start that resembled anything like they had last year, needed that to continue, needed that
Yeah.
handful of nucleus, the Greenways, the Folinos, and everybody else. Now they get hit by an injury bug. I mean, the most decorated one is obviously Fleury, whom we'll talk about here. But with Jordan Greenway out of the lineup and a guy like Ryan Hartman out of the lineup, a guy like, other people coming back, a guy like Matt Boldy not having the numbers, what you'd have to say is a pretty close to getting sent down to Iowa in, I'm having a mental break right now, Marco Rossi.
Yes.
Marco Rossi has been invisible. I'm sorry, he has
Yep.
been. So these were the factors that Guerin needed to have happen to have any sort of resemblance of the season that they started out with last year, and we've all seen what happened.
Yeah, for sure. And to me, one thing too, I know we noted it last time in the podcast, and I noticed it again big time last night, is the penalties on both sides, actually. But especially from the Wild, that it felt like every goal last night was either we were on a penalty kill or we turned it over center ice, some type of pass was picked. We just didn't look good. They weren't setting up plays other than when they're on power plays. So, and we actually are second still in all the NHL by only 1 minute difference in most penalties again on us.
Yeah, no question about it. We talked about it at length last week. You want to get in Dean
Yep.
Evanson's doghouse? You want to get in everybody's doghouse? Take lazy penalties. Mason Shaw had one
Right.
last night where he physically whacked one of the greatest players in hockey history in the face with a stick late in the game and in a stupid spot to do it. I love Mason Shaw, but you don't hit Sidney Crosby in the face 200 feet from the goal. And what happens? They get a power play. That's lazy hockey, Cole. You played enough hockey to know if you stop moving your feet and you're making hope plays and you're just wishing and you're out of position, you have to scramble. This league's too good to not expose laziness. And when you're exposing laziness, you're taking a lot of penalties and spending a lot of time in the sin bin. And the Wild are spending far too much time in the sin bin. And, oh, by the way, their penalty kill is not great right now either.
Right. Yeah, it's having a tough time. Other than the shorthanded goal last night, we've having a tough time. But, one thing I didn't realize last week when I was looking it up again this week is that, yes, we are second in penalties, getting penalties, but actually we're drawing more penalties than anyone else in the NHL by far. We have 275 penalty minutes that we've drawn. In second place is the Caps with 222. It's not even close. So
Wow,
do you think that's a little
gap.
bit of a, right? Yeah, it's a little bit of aggressive hockey, maybe drawing penalties, and the fact that we're drawing more penalties than we're actually getting. So if we want to look at some optimism, that could be it.
That's a shocking stat, and I agree. I'm all about optimism. You know that.
Right.
It's also proof that other teams are capable of playing lazy hockey too, and it's also proof in the pudding that if you move your feet, you're going to draw penalties, and when you're not moving your feet, you're going to take penalties. So that's an excellent analysis there. I like that. Yeah, you've been working, my boy.
Yeah, I found that stat and I was like, that's crazy. I didn't even realize exactly at first what PIMA stood for, but
yeah, and that's a huge differential. I'm shocked by that differential.
Yeah, massive gap. I'd be curious to hear what anybody else has to say on that if you want to comment. But unfortunately, you talked about it earlier. Let's discuss Fleury a little bit. He's he's on the injured reserve now with an upper body injury. Sounds like it could be a short stint. They haven't really given us a lot of information from what I've heard. But what kind of upper body injuries do you feel like are toughest on a goalie? Do you think this is something that could linger? Is it something that's, they just needed to give him a break?
No, I think if he could play, he would. Obviously, and a lot of Wild fans probably wish he would. Watching Gustafsson last night. No offense to the Swede, but he's 1-4, and the winning goal last night should never have gone in at almost any hockey level. But we get back to Fleury. Two things I think about: upper body injury tells me it might be a head. Goalies get a lot of shots off the melon. They get a lot of coincidental contact in the crease. I didn't see anything that indicated this. This is not confirmed and kind of speculation. But if they tell me upper body injury, that's not like a sprained finger or that's a head injury to me. This is this was I would project if I was still a sports reporter and I would be asking about. I would say that the fact that he's only on the IR for a week and it's an upper body injury, I'd be way more concerned if it was a longer than 1 week IR and it was a lower body injury, because we all have been around hockey enough to know how much goaltenders use their legs. And if this is a groin, if this is a hamstring, if this is any type of disturbance below the belt in terms of his mobility, I think I'd be feeling a lot more paranoid about having Fleury gone longer than. I think if it's an upper body injury, I think he's back sooner. If it's long as it's not a lower body and it does not appear and they can't hedge on that,
right.
I think he'll be back sooner than later.
Well, that's some good positivity for sure. I mean, Fleury and Gustafsson, really, if you take away a couple games, have been miraculous this year. I mean, if you take out, on the first 3 games of the season, they let in 20 goals, or Fleury and Gustafsson, a couple of those as well. But if you take out those 3 games, we're actually, in the last 14 games since then, just taking out those 3, even including last night, we have a 2.45 goals against average. And that would put us at 4th in the NHL for goals against. And that's pretty good because we are not sitting in 4th as far as record. So obviously that shows that our offense needs to step it up as well. But if you take out last night's game too, the first 3 and last night's, we would be leading the NHL in goals against average. So what does that tell you? And what do you think has changed since the first 3 games?
A couple things. You stayed up late last night looking into some incredible stats. But if I was a defense attorney, I would be saying that you said if in that whole diatribe, and too many ifs probably if you're looking at it. Fun stat, I think if you take the ifs out of that and you just say look at what they did and this is what they did and this is what they did, show me. I'd probably think that was a sexier stat.
Yeah, for sure. And we've lost a lot of close games we've dropped that you can't, you look at and it's not a blowout, but you expect the offense to step up from there. And Gustafsson, like you said earlier, has a 1-4 record and kind of like baseball pitcher. I mean, obviously that's nothing. That's not everything. It doesn't show it all, but he has a save percentage over 900 still, which is above average for a goalie in the NHL, I would say. And now we got Zane McIntyre up. Do you have any expectations for Gustafsson and McIntyre with Fleury out?
Honestly, and I'm a little partial to Iowa because I have some connections down there.
Yes.
I would not. If I was running this team right now, there's again if. So that means it's not going to happen. But if I was running the team, I wouldn't dally too long on Gustafsson based on especially that third. Was it the 4th goal last night when they had?
Yeah.
When the Wild had battled back and made it 3-2, and then he let in that muffin, basically a wrist shot unobstructed from the little obstruction from the blue line. If those trends are can continue, I would ride Zane McIntyre, who's done a really sturdy, solid job in Iowa. He's from Thief River Falls, played at North Dakota. This is his dream. He's going to get the extra mojo going because he's playing, and he only has, I think, 8 to 10 NHL games, I think, with the Flyers. Yep. But if Fleury's out and Gustafsson's letting in beach balls, I'm to the point where I'm saying, if not McIntyre, let's call our buddy the Swede, the number 1 draft pick, Jesper Wallstedt, and say, we know you're not ready, but it can't get any worse. Get on up I-35. And I know you've met Wallstedt with me on an upcoming edition of Hot Dish Sports, and I know you've seen him handle the calm, cool, and collected on a golf course, and we've seen him very calm, cool, and collected on the hockey rink in our filming, haven't we?
For sure, yeah. We went to practice and got to watch them for the day and hang out with them. And I watched a little Zane McIntyre too. I agree, he's good, man. I saw him working on dry land, and he has some he's got some skills. It's a little different, obviously, dry land to on ice, but just seeing the way that he was able to do some moves that I was very impressed as a goaltender could do. But yeah, Jesper, first round pick. People are calling for him on Twitter.
Hey, and listen, Billy Guerin, we've talked about it many times on Hot Dish. He's not pulling the trigger fast and prematurely, but this is the one situation. If you're waiting on a forward or a defenseman, this is the one situation where if it's Katie bar the door, and by the way, let's face it, the one guy we haven't talked about yet, talking about the goaltending woes and the possibilities here, how good would Cam Talbot look right now in a Minnesota Wild uniform?
Yeah, it would have been nice to have him sitting there.
That's the hindsight. That's the hindsight of life, isn't it? If.
We love Fleury. Don't get me wrong, but if Fleury is hurt for an extended period of time, we're in some trouble. That's for sure. And
well, if you remember, we traded Talbot and then got Gustafsson too. So you have to be.
And I'm not sure. You probably know more about this than I do, but as far as contracts go, if they call up Jesper, is that like baseball where their contract kicks in and now you've got to pay him you lose a year of extra free agency or anything like that?
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a sports attorney or NHL PA rep.
Right.
I think you have a designated amount of games. I think you can conceivably play. And I think there's emergency clauses too. That you can lean on. So I would guess that there is going to be a cap, and if he gets past a certain point, then that kicks into play.
Yeah, and I wouldn't hold out too many expectations that we call him up either, because he did just turn 20 years old last week. He's still got some learning to do. He's only been with Iowa for 2 months now, so
yeah,
he's just getting used to the U.S. at this point. So, but. It would be pretty great to see Jesper Wallstedt get called up, and I know that the entire Wild Twitter fan base would go pretty crazy if they did, because I've seen his name thrown out there many times. But yeah, overall,
let's face it.
Right.
Crazier things have happened, right? I mean, if this swoon continues and the Gustafsson can't be counted on, and McIntyre's not your guy, what are you going to do? And if the Fleury thing lingers, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Hey, and by the way, if the Wild can't score goals, we found out Wallstedt can score goals now too down in Iowa. He literally scored a goal from 180 feet down there.
Yeah. Oh, that was awesome.
in the AHL.
That was thrown onto the ESPN top 10 too right away. I saw. That's pretty. And that was on his birthday, I believe.
That was the day before his birthday.
Day before? Yeah, crazy. Yeah. There can't be a lot of guys out there who can say they were 19 years old when they scored their first goal in NHL minor leagues, especially as a goalie. That's got to be a record. I don't know how you look that up, but there's got to be some kind of stat that says that's never happened.
It was amazing, and it was perfect, and it capped off a big win for the Iowa Wild too against Chicago. Yeah. Really good team.
And that was Wallstedt's first win too, which was great to see. But as far as winning goes, what, in your opinion, do the Wild have to start doing to climbing back up? Other than we talked a lot about goaltending, penalties, what else do you need to see for the Wild to step it up?
It's going to help to get healthy. Let's start with the overall health of the team. They're a team that can ill afford, especially with Fiala gone and their cap strap, to have struggles in the health department. And then as you get healthier, let's see a return to balanced scoring. Let's get some secondary scoring. Let's get some lines 2 and 3 actively engaged and contributing and get some points. Let's get guys like Matt Boldy, back on a little bit of a swing here. Let's not play lazy hockey. Get rid of the penalties as much as you can. You still got to be your identity team. And you know what? Execute. You're going to have to just execute a game plan that the Wild coaching staff gives them every night, and go. The one thing you'll find out, especially in the National Hockey League, is if you're fading by Christmas, it's awfully tough to recoup points in January and February and down the stretch in March. So, here's the happy holidays for the Wild and some sustained winning. And the good news is not that Cole, were to the point of the St. Louis Blues, who I think the last time we talked had lost 8 in a row, now have won 8 in a row. you can go on rolls. And, anything on a roll at the holidays tastes great, but the Wild need to get on a roll here.
Yep, I agree. I agree with the pre-holiday ticket as well, because once you get into January, teams, they're clicking, they've got it figured out, the lines are all set. You're not in you're not in preseason anymore. I know it's still regular season now, but this is the last. You got to get there before the holidays for sure, and it just keeps spirits up too. But hopefully, we'll see some wins here pretty soon. They got a couple games this week, right? I'm not sure. I didn't actually write down who they play. I have to check, but.
Yeah, I know Winnipeg's coming to town next week. I know they play a pretty good Carolina Hurricanes team tomorrow night on Saturday at XL, and then I think they come back with a little bit of a muffin. They're home for 6 more games here, so there's some home cooking to be done.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, the Jets, you're right. Those are the next 2 games. But yeah, hopefully we get to see some Wild win. If anybody out there watching has any thoughts on anything we said, any extra comments we missed, and hopefully the Wild keep drawing penalties.
Where can I get a T-shirt? A Kirill for MVP T-shirt. That's comment. My question.
Anybody wants to leave a comment, maybe we'll send out some T-shirts. I'll make sure to get you one, Gis. We'll get
I have a comment. It's a beautiful shirt, Obi. It would look really good on me. That's my comment.
Nice, yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, we'll have some more T-shirts coming out pretty soon once the season starts picking up. Hopefully we can say win streak very soon. Let's see that happen. But to anyone watching, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it. Please like, subscribe, comment. It helps us out on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, anywhere Hot Dish Sports is found. Anyways, go Wild.